Sven, it seems you're muted.
Yes, I see that
Yes.
I'm mute. Okay, so welcome to the Azure Stack HCI show. Good to have you here, and Manfred, good to have you here as well. How are you doing today?
Yeah, welcome. I'm looking forward to the show today because we have planned a lot of live demos. And as you know, I like live demos. I like showing the product we are talking about. Yeah.
What is our topic today?
Our topic today is about management of Windows Admin Center, management of Azure Stack HCI with Windows Admin Center and different other tools. It's Windows Admin Center, it's Failover Cluster Manager, it's Hyper-V Manager, but also the Azure portal via the Azure Arc connectivity.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a lot of live demo. Last week or 2 weeks ago in the Azure Stack HCI show, we talked about basics, about what Azure Stack HCI is, about licensing and so on. And today we will have much more live demos. So hopefully you enjoy it. But before we start, we would like to introduce the Azure Stack HCI Tech Talk channel. This is a YouTube channel and a LinkedIn channel as well. So if you look for Azure Stack HCI Tech Talk, you will find both. And we invite you to follow us on two platforms to be up to date about Azure Stack HCI related topics. And don't forget, in around about 2.5 weeks, we will have Microsoft Ignite, and we expect a lot of announcements at Microsoft Ignite. And so our platform, Azure Stack HCI Tech Talk, will exactly where you will get all the news that will pop up, and in the Azure Stack HCI show directly after the Ignite announcements, we will go much more into all the details. Okay, so let's start with today's show and with all the live demos. But first of all, Manfred, I think it makes sense to give an overview what a Windows Admin Center is and how customers can use it.
Yeah, so I will share my screen because I've opened the learn.microsoft.com page, and I can recommend you to use this page when you need information around Azure Stack HCI, about Windows Admin Center, about Azure Arc, because it's very detailed. We have very deep technical information there about the topics, and also step-by-step guides, how to start with Windows Admin Center, how to install Windows Admin Center. And Windows Admin Center, per definition, is an management tool that works web-based. So we install a small web server. It's very easy, uncomplicated, and we use a web browser to connect to the Windows Admin Center. And this is the big advantage compared to traditional management tools, because traditional management tools, like, for example, Failover Cluster Manager, had to be installed on the machine where we wanted to start with our management activity. So there was an installer, we have to install this tool, Hyper-V Manager, Failover Cluster Manager, whatever, and then we could use this. Even System Center Virtual Machine Manager, which is also a very powerful tool for management, had to be installed with an agent on the machine where we wanted to take these management actions. And this is completely different in the Windows Admin Center, because with Windows Admin Center, we have the situation that we use a web browser on a Windows client. It can be Windows 10, it can be Windows 11. And on this machine, we are using a supported web browser. Supported web browsers are Edge browser. This is my preferred one, because Edge browser is very functional when we are using in private browsing session. And we can also use Google Chrome. It's also supported. Both will work. You will see if you use Firefox or things like this, they will also work, but official supported are only Edge and the Chrome browser. The interesting thing in using this web browser is that we can start managing ad hoc from any machine. So we don't need first to install the management tool and then start with the management. We can use any management station, and then we can connect to the Windows Admin Center. The Windows Admin Center can be installed on a dedicated management host. It can be installed locally on the client, or it can be installed on the managed node. This is an interesting option because when you think about installing the Windows Admin Center on each node, then you don't need this dedicated management server we have here in the second configuration option. So when we talk about these configuration options, let's say this is 1, this is option 2, this here is option 3 and option 4. Then the question is, which one is the preferred? My preferred one is option 2. There we have a dedicated management server, and on the server, we install the Windows Admin Center. It's a small installer file we can download at Microsoft. It's about 100 megabytes in size. It brings the embedded web server and the Windows Admin Center itself. Because usually we need some management instance in the network, also in an Azure Stack HCI environment. So we need usually a domain controller. We need somewhere witness share. The witness can be in the cloud, but it could also be somewhere in this management host environment. Usually we need a backup solution and things like this. And this is the reason why I would prefer option 2. But option 3 is more and more interesting when we think in the hybrid cloud world, because we could think about using Windows Admin Center from the Azure portal. And then we don't need this management host locally because we can use the distributed installation of Windows Admin Center on the managed servers themselves. There's an interesting technical question about this for those that already know Windows Admin Center. Usually, it's not possible to install Windows Admin Center on a domain controller. So we can install it on Azure Stack HCI hosts, on Hyper-V hosts, on file servers, but not on a domain controller. If we use the option to run Windows Admin Center from the Azure portal, then it can also be used to manage directly a domain controller. So if you prefer option 3, and if your Windows Admin Center instance is operated via the Azure option, then we have the advantage that we also can manage the domain controllers and we don't need this infrastructure host. Option 1 is interesting if you have different admin workstations where you want to run the Windows Admin Center locally on the machine. And option 4, I've not seen very many configurations with this Windows Admin Center as a high available configuration. This is possible from the technical perspective to build a cluster with the Windows Admin Center installation. But when you think about the advantage we have, if you have hundreds of administrators that work via the Windows Admin Center, then you must imagine if the Windows Admin Center is down, they cannot work with their preferred tool. They can use PowerShell or other tools, but then maybe it can be helpful to have the Windows Admin Center clustered. If you have 1, 2, 3, or some administrators and the Windows Admin Center is down, then it's important to know that the workload on the nodes is still up and running. So the Admin Center itself has no impact on the nodes if the Admin Center is not reachable or if the Admin Center is down. So this is the reason why you usually don't build a high available Windows Admin Center installation. Interesting is also that the Windows Admin Center will install no agent on the machines. So in this scenario, for example, the nodes that are managed by Windows Admin Center are managed via PowerShell remote and WMI remote. So we don't need any additional software on the target nodes to manage them. And this is an advantage if you have environments where nothing should be changed, if there shouldn't be installed any additional software tools. And so this is the reason why I really prefer Windows Admin Center for management. I think this is a good point to have a look at the Windows Admin Center. What I already prepared, I already installed the Windows Admin Center because we have an easy wizard where we click next, 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 and then Windows Admin Center is installed. We have one important thing we should know in the Windows Admin Center installation. We need a certificate for the Windows Admin Center because it's a secure connection we have here. Here you can see I'm connected via a web browser to my Windows Admin Center instance. It's called WAC01, so WAC01. And the certificate in my scenario is a self-signed certificate. This is created via the setup. For sure, you can use your own web server certificates if you want to change the certificate. I'm asked very often about this, how to change the certificate. We can go to the control panel of the machine where the Windows Admin Center is running. We can go to the programs and features. We can select the Windows Admin Center, and there's a change option here. When we click on change, we can change everything we decided while the installation was executed. So the certificate, the ports, the HTTPS redirection, and so on. And usually here you will go to change when you want to switch to another certificate. Okay, when we start with the Windows Admin Center, this list is empty, and we only have the Windows Admin Center itself in the list, so this one here, and we have the information, this is the gateway machine. So to add systems here, we can click on add, and we can add servers, Windows client PCs, server clusters, and Azure VMs. So there's no special button for Azure Stack HCI, because Azure Stack HCI, when we talk about the nodes, these are servers, and we have already configured clusters. This is a server cluster, so there's no difference. When we want to deploy a new Azure Stack HCI cluster, we can decide to create a new one. And here we can choose between Windows Server based and Azure Stack HCI based. For us, for sure, it would be Azure Stack HCI. And then we have a wizard where we can decide to have all servers in one side. This is for most implementations the default scenario. Or if we have servers in two sides, where we have a stretched cluster configuration. In this configuration, all servers in one side, we have minimum 2 servers, minimum 2 nodes, maximum 60 nodes. When we have a stretched configuration, we have minimum 4 nodes. The interesting thing is the wizard will also configure a stretch cluster with 2 nodes, but this is not supported. So the wizard works fine. Everything in this wizard is very helpful for deploying Azure Stack HCI. But regarding the stretch scenario, you have to know that you need minimum 4 servers, because if you build a 2-node stretched configuration, it's not supported, and you will realize that you are not able to create any volumes because you cannot build the local redundancy. Interesting is in this option, all servers in one side. We mentioned this 2 weeks ago in our first English language session where we talked about basics, that Azure Stack HCI starts with 1 node, but this single node scenario is not configurable via the Windows Admin Center. When we have a single node configuration, we must deploy it via PowerShell. It's very easy because a single server deployment is not very complex, but today it's not possible to do this via the graphical user interface in the Windows Admin Center.
Yes, and on your and on my YouTube channel, there is a short video describing exactly how the deployment of the single node works. So we can put a link to that in the comments of this show today. And as always, if you have questions, you can type your questions into the chat window, and we try to answer them immediately in this show. And if you're not familiar with Azure Stack HCI and with Windows Admin Center, you might think, why should I use Windows Admin Center? Isn't there any graphical user interface for Azure Stack HCI? And the answer is no, there is not a graphical user interface. And even for Windows Server, the graphical user interface has not changed over the last couple of versions. So Windows Admin Center is a kind of new graphical user interface for Windows Server and Azure Stack HCI and other operating systems Manfred showed before. And the good thing is that you can manage multiple servers from one tool. And the best thing is Azure Stack HCI itself is absolutely for free. So you do not have to invest. additional dollars in having this modern graphical user interface for your server infrastructure.
Yeah, this is an important point Sven is addressing. I did a remote connection to one of my Azure Stack HCI nodes, and as you can see, this is a reduced graphical user interface. So we have a text-based menu where we can choose to add the machine to the domain. So the basic configuration is available via this text-based choices here, but it's not very usable to configure now storage spaces direct and Hyper-V in the cluster. It works fine if we have a prepared script, then it works perfectly. But usually you have a prepared script if you deploy several of these clusters. You don't have one cluster, but you have 10 identical configured clusters or 20 or hundreds of them. Then you will work script-based. But if you want to deploy one cluster, the problem is that it will take a lot of time to create the script, to test the script, to optimize it. And if you then use it once, it's not very efficient. And this is the reason why you would use for individual deployments the graphical user interface in the Windows Admin Center. So here we can see it's not a problem that the node itself, it's a server core installation with a reduced graphical user interface, because we could start here and could say, okay, let's create a cluster. And then we can see we have 5 major steps. It's getting started, it's configuring the networking, it's clustering, then it's storage, and then it's optional, the software-defined networking. In each category, we have several sub-steps. So the get started is checking if the nodes are up to date, installing updates, and so on. Networking helps us to properly configure the network interfaces used for the virtual machine traffic and for the storage traffic. Clustering enables the cluster, storage enables storage spaces direct, and software-defined networking is optional. As Sven mentioned, we already have videos about Azure Stack HCI deployment on our YouTube channels. They are available via the Azure Stack HCI deployment specialist video series on our channels. If you are interested in this deployment, feel free to use the chat to give us feedback. I'm sure we can use one of the following Azure Stack HCI show dates to go deeper in this to deployment. What's important here, this is the deployment today for Azure Stack HCI version 2020 H2. We already have a public preview of a new deployment tool. It's called the Lifecycle Manager. It's available on the Microsoft Learn page for Azure Stack HCI via the supplemental pack. The look and feel is identical, but this is a dedicated setup wizard for Azure Stack HCI. So here's important to know that there will change some steps in the future, maybe for 22 H2, but also for the future versions of Azure Stack HCI. So I will not go through this deployment wizard because this will take an hour or more. I will go back to my list of servers, and here we can see I already have an Azure Stack HCI cluster. It's not correct. I have 3 Azure Stack HCI clusters. It's the 101, the 103, and the 111 here. Important for these clusters is that Windows Admin Center is modular from the technical perspective. And when we go to the settings on the right-hand upper side of the Windows Admin Center, we have the settings of the Windows Admin Center tool, and there we have extensions. Extensions are, let's say, add-ins for Windows Admin Center that bring additional capabilities. And when I look at my installed extensions, when I look at the installed extensions, I can see here, for example, there's an failover cluster tool. Yeah, Azure Stack HCI always runs a failover cluster. Even in the single node configuration, we have a failover cluster. Then we have GPU for the GPU support. We have the virtual machines and switches here for the virtual machine management. When I go back to the available extensions, I can see there are much more extensions, and there are also some extensions that are not from Microsoft. Here, for example, I can see I have some extensions from Dell. I have some extensions from Fujitsu. I have some extensions from Data On, we can see here. When I go down the list, I can see there are extensions from HPE, from Lenovo, and so on, from QCT, Thomas Krenn. So these are different hardware vendors that created an extension for the Windows Admin Center. This is mandatory for integrated systems of Azure Stack HCI. This is optional for validated nodes. And this extension helps me to also manage the hardware, because when I look at an Azure Stack HCI cluster, first I will connect to the operating system, but then for sure I will also know what disks are in there, what is the memory configuration, and so on. And when we go now to one of my Windows Admin Center, one of the Azure Stack HCI machines here, I will connect to the cluster 101. Then I first will see the dashboard view. And in the dashboard view in this cluster, I will see as soon as the page is loaded that I have some issues here. This tool says, okay, there's a drive in my configuration, and I cannot communicate with this drive. So it may be disconnected, it maybe have a failure, so something happened to this drive. When I want to go deeper in these errors, I can go directly to the drives here, where I can see there's one critical, or I can go to the drives list and see which drive failed. When I go to the inventory, then I have a big difference here. If I have a validated node without Windows Admin Center integration or an integrated system, here I can see I have my two servers, this one here and this one here, and I have one drive where there's an issue. This is a validated node. I will be able to locate this drive. I can select this drive. I could say, okay, in which bay is this drive? Where is it connected, and so on. In the integrated systems, I will have a graphical view with the layout of my physical server, where I see in detail which slot has the issue, so that I can address the slot without looking into the manual. Where is bus 0 device 23? But from the technical perspective, I can locate this drive and then replace it. So let's go a little bit through the options here in the Windows Admin Center. I know Sven prefers the Windows Admin Center in dark mode. For those of you that also want to use this is no problem to switch to dark mode, because you can personalize here. It's only one switch, then you have it in dark mode. I usually prefer the light mode. The functionality is identical. It's only a question of how the information is displayed. So in the dashboard, we already have seen we have the most important information. I have a failure on a drive, my servers are healthy, I have 19 virtual machines running, 5 virtual machines are off, and all these sections here, all these information blades have deep links. So if I want to see, oh, virtual machines, okay, 19 running, 5 off, I can click here and I will be directed directly to the virtual machines. So I can use all these areas in the dashboard view as active areas. And what's interesting in the dashboard, I have a very, very important part here about Azure Arc, because we talked about this 2 weeks ago in the session. Azure Stack HCI is always registered. It has to be registered in Azure. And here I can see this Azure Stack HCI cluster is registered and it's connected. So everything works fine. I have no limitation, and Azure Arc for this cluster is also enabled. So I have the connectivity to the Azure portal. Okay, this is also a deep link. I can click on this resource in Azure and jump directly into the Azure portal. We will do this later. For those of you that are already managing clusters based on Windows Server and Storage Spaces Direct or based on Azure Stack HCI, you know there are many settings, and these settings are available in the central settings tool here in the Windows Admin Center. So I can configure my storage settings, for example, storage spaces and pools. I can configure the properties of the cluster, the Hyper-V host settings, and for sure, all the Azure Stack HCI specific sections. The test Azure connectivity, the monitoring data delivery, the service health. The resource bridge is available here via an informational entry. The resource bridge actually only can be configured via PowerShell, but the resource bridge is today a preview. The resource bridge is a technology that brings us enhanced connectivity to Azure. So for managing our servers from Azure, we need the Azure Arc integration, and we have seen these servers are Azure Arc integrated. With the Azure Arc Resource Bridge, we can also deploy Hyper-V VMs from the Azure portal on our local Azure Stack HCI cluster. We can start these machines, we can reconfigure these machines. This is all possible via the Azure portal. This is then also connected to the Azure Arc VM setup. Here we have the option to configure the way how virtual machines will be activated. And very important, when we use Azure Stack HCI, we can configure the Azure benefits, because we mentioned this 2 weeks ago that Azure Stack HCI brings us additional value because the workload on Azure Stack HCI sees an Azure environment. This is only the case if we use the Azure benefits and when we activate the Azure benefits. If we do not activate the Azure benefits, the Azure Stack HCI cluster acts like an Hyper-V cluster. So the virtual machines will see, okay, I'm running on Hyper-V. When the Azure benefits are activated, they will see, okay, I'm running on Azure. And in this specific situation, they are running on Azure in our data center. And here we can see I have a lot of virtual machines, and some of these virtual machines have Azure benefits enabled. Here, for example, virtual machines with Azure Virtual Desktop. These are machines, they are used as Azure Virtual Desktop clients. And I have machines that have Azure benefits enabled because of the extended security updates. These two machines, this is also an Azure benefit, so that we will receive security updates even after the end of support date. Since 10th of October this year, Windows Server 2012 and 2012 are end of support. So they would also receive extended support updates or extended security updates if we bring these older machines to Azure Stack HCI and we enable the Azure benefits for these machines. And the next two machines are Windows Server Data Center Azure Edition machines. This is also an Azure benefit. This is a special edition of Windows Server Data Center that has an extended functionality like hot patching. This is a technology that allows to install patches with nearly no downtime, because the servers don't need a full restart. They only partially restart the affected components by the update. So it's a really powerful edition of Windows Server Data Center. It's only available in Azure and on Azure Stack HCI. And on Azure Stack HCI, we need to activate these Azure benefits. This can all be controlled via the Windows Admin Center.
For so sure, Manfred, before we continue, we have a question from Thomas received. He wants to know when the next release of Azure Stack HCI will be. So I think you agree that we recommend to watch the Microsoft Ignite, because at Microsoft Ignite, I'm pretty sure we will talk about the next version of Azure Stack HCI and about the release date. Or don't you expect this?
So I expect that we talk about this around the Microsoft Ignite. The interesting thing is that they are already, the session catalog is already online, and I have not seen a session with exactly this topic, but I'm pretty sure that somewhere around Ignite it will be announced. So the recommendation is to be in the Azure Stack HCI show after Ignite, because they will really
Okay,
talk
but
about it. Yeah.
Ignite time
Yeah.
frame, we
Yeah,
expect to get
absolutely.
all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
details about how the next version looks like, when it will be available. And another part of the question is about GPU pooling and partitioning. Will it stay in the preview or will it be general available?
Yeah, this is an interesting question,
Yeah.
because I am not aware that GPU partitioning
Yeah, me neither. So
is in
I checked
preview
the
actually.
learn.microsoft website and I don't find any comment about that it's in a preview. So my understanding is that it's public available already.
I'm also looking in the documentation, because I'm pretty sure, and I'm using this in several deployments, the use GPU is with clustered VMs. There's no preview hint on the article here. So
Yeah.
in Azure Stack HCI 22H2, and there it was introduced, the GPU partitioning is available there. So I don't see any information, or I don't have any information that it is in preview. It was in preview in the past, I would say at the end of 21H2. So I have several implementations where GPUs are used. I'm not aware that there should be anything in preview. I don't know what the feature set of Azure Stack HCI 23H2 will be. So if your question is related to the next version, I don't know which features are in there in detail, or those I know they are under NDA. In my Windows Admin Center, it shows preview. This is interesting. So Thomas, if you go to the GPUs on your Windows Admin Center, and yes, now I know what you are thinking about. You are thinking about this here. Here we have to see, we have the Windows Admin Center on one side, and we have the Azure Stack HCI on the other side. On Azure Stack HCI, GPU partitioning, GPU P, is, I would say, RTM. I don't know if this is the official word for Azure Stack HCI, but it's not in preview anymore. In Windows Admin Center, this is the management tool. There is GPU minus P in preview. This means if you use the Windows Admin Center for managing GPU partitioning or GPU pooling, you are using a preview management tool, or part of a preview management tool, to manage an released to manufacturing feature. If you use PowerShell to manage GPU partitioning, you are fully, let's say, supported somewhere. I don't have seen any issues with managing GPUs via the Windows Admin Center when I'm using supported GPUs. But my understanding of preview is, if you contact support and you say Microsoft support, oh, I have issues in configuring GPU partitioning via Windows Admin Center, they will say, okay, let's go via PowerShell, because the Windows Admin Center part is in preview. So the management tool for this section is in preview, not the feature itself. Oh,
One more question popping up.
and one more question about 23H2. Do you think we see live migration of VMs with GPUs? Important is here to know, if I have virtual machines with GPUs attached in an Azure Stack HCI, and this is an exclusive Azure Stack HCI feature, this is not available in Hyper-V today, then we have the situation that a failover will work. So if one of my hosts will have a failure, the virtual machine will be provided on the remaining host. So let's imagine here in my configuration, host 2 would go down, so the PS127 would go down. We would have an issue here. Then all the virtual machines go down and they will be started on the remaining hosts, so the PS126. And even if they have a GPU configured, they will start there. So a failover already works today if we use the GPU pooling, not the discrete device assignment. Where Thomas is right, if we try to live migrate a virtual machine, so we could decide to use, for example, this machine here and go to manage here and then move to another node, and live migration is without any downtime. It's a planned moving of the virtual machine to another node. This actually does not work if this virtual machine has a GPU attached. I don't know if this will be a feature of 23H2. Many of these 23H2 features, we expect that they will be announced around Ignite, so in 2 or 3 weeks. If you want to look a little bit into this and say, okay, Microsoft, maybe Manfred and Sven are not able to talk about things that are in NDA, but I want to see what Microsoft does in the next versions, then you can go to settings in the Windows Admin Center for your cluster, and you can go to the join preview channel. Never do this for a production cluster, but with the preview channel, you will not receive 23H2, but you will receive bits and bytes that are on the path to 23H2. So you will receive future versions, and there you could, for example, test what happens if I try to live migrate a virtual machine with an attached GPU. Such answers we can deliver not in the next Azure Stack HCI show, but in 4 weeks, I think. So next Azure Stack HCI show is exactly at Microsoft, before Microsoft Ignite, and in 4 weeks we are past Ignite, and there we will have a lot of information about this.
Yeah, there are two things that are interesting to know about the preview channel. So one is the preview channel is absolutely for free. So Azure Stack HCI is at $10 per physical month per core, per physical core per month.
Yeah.
And if you join the preview channel, you get Azure Stack HCI unlimited for free. So it's very nice to test. But you cannot go back to a paid version. You have to reinstall. That's important to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is important to know, because if we now go a little bit further and have a look into the Azure portal, let's for example go to Azure Arc and see, okay, my Azure Stack HCI is registered and there's a direct link to the Azure portal here. And back to Thomas' question, this is also in preview here, and important, the Azure Stack HCI registration and the Arc enablement is not in preview. This is completely production supported, but this Windows Admin Center extension for the Azure Stack HCI registration, this is in preview. So the management tool, the graphical tool, is in preview, not the Admin Center itself, but this module here. The functionality behind it is not in preview. I had a workshop last 3 days about Azure Stack HCI. And there we have seen an interesting thing. We used this Windows Admin Center extension to register the servers in Azure. So here's an unregistered button. If they are not registered, you click on this and they are registered. And this didn't work completely. So we have seen the situation that the cluster was registered, but the servers were not Arc enabled. And this is, let's say, issue of this preview part here, because we could go to PowerShell without any problems and execute the Azure registration of Azure Stack HCI, including the Arc-enabled servers via PowerShell. And this is what preview means. The management tool in this part is maybe not final, is maybe not perfect with this bit and byte version here, but it's intended to be published somewhere in the future. The functionality behind it works for sure completely. Okay,
Yeah, there's one more service that is on preview at the moment. It is Azure Virtual Desktop. And Thomas has one more question about Azure Virtual Desktop and if there are any news, if and when it will come to Azure Stack HCI. So if we think back 1 year, we all expected that at Ignite, we will have the announcement that Azure Virtual Desktop will be GA soon, but it did not happen. There was a second phase of a public preview. But now in 2.5 weeks, we will have the next Ignite. And yeah, there's not a lot I'm allowed to say about that, but I recommend to look at all the announcements at Ignite. And I think you will be more satisfied than you have been 1 year ago.
And what's important to know, Azure Virtual Desktop is available today as a preview. In this specific area, we have a preview of the service. It's not like I said with the GPUs and with the Arc integration where the Windows Admin Center is with the tool in preview, but the service is full functional and RTM. Here we have the situation that the service behind it is in preview, but it works very well. I'm using Azure Virtual Desktop since it was announced as a preview, as a public preview. And this is the, let's say, latest evolution of Azure Virtual Desktop. It really works great on Azure Stack HCI. But the deployment is a handish action today. So I have to install the virtual machines, I have to install the agents, I have to connect it to Azure. And my expectation is that we will have a wizard like we have it for the cluster deployment or for the Azure Arc integration that makes it easier. And coming back to your specific question, Thomas, I'm pretty sure when Azure Virtual Desktop is published, the service will be available. We will have a full functional service, but I'm pretty sure that deployment wizard in the first version will be preview of this deployment wizard, because I don't have seen such a deployment wizard today. So for sure, somebody has to test it. And then we have again the situation that the functionality is available, is ready to use, and the tool maybe is a few more months in preview. Okay, let's have a look at the Azure portal. There we have this Azure Stack HCI cluster registered here. And let's see what we can do with this Azure Stack HCI cluster via the Azure portal, because this is very interesting when you work on scale. You maybe don't have only one cluster, but you have several of these HCI clusters. For sure, we have an own Azure Stack HCI category here in Azure. And when I look at all clusters, I have several of these clusters here in the environment. And if you are familiar a little bit with Azure, you know that in Azure, for sure, you can manage your single instances. But you could also say, okay, let's say use an ARM template, an Azure Resource Manager template that deploys services on each of these clusters, that configures things on each of these clusters. So we have this management at scale opportunity. And for sure, we can also connect to a single cluster here. So I could, for example, open the Azure Stack HCI cluster 101. And Sven mentioned we have the advantage if we switch to an preview channel. We don't have costs for this Azure Stack HCI cluster regarding the cores. Here we can see the billing status. I have this cluster included with the Azure Hybrid benefit. We talked about this in the last Azure Stack HCI show when we talked about the licensing options. And here we can see I have total 32 physical cores, but I have covered them by the Azure Hybrid benefit because I'm using Windows Server licenses in combination with software assurance here. This is possible So for sure, we also have information about our specific configuration extensions. Here I can see in the Azure portal, I can use Auto Manage for my servers. I can use Azure Virtual Desktop. And we had this question in the chat. Here I already have a deploy button, but when I go to this deployment, I don't have this nice wizard. I have actually a form where I can enter some very technical Azure information and where I could start my deployment of Azure Virtual Desktop via an ARM template where I fill in the values here. I'm looking forward to see the next version of this somewhere in the future. So in the Azure portal, we also can use, for example, the virtual machines. If we have an Azure Arc resource bridge, and we have a similar situation. We have a preview here. The preview is for this virtual machine management. For sure, virtual machines are not in preview. And this is interesting. I can see here a list of my virtual machines in this cluster. And let's see this virtual machine 2020 here. And let's locate the virtual machine 2020 locally on the machine. This is a virtual machine. This has 8 virtual CPUs, and this has an assigned memory of 2 gigabytes. Let's cross-check this in the settings. I go to the settings of the machine because it could be a dynamic memory configuration of the machine. And you all know I could go to the settings of the virtual machine and, for example, change the memory size here. Okay, it's a dynamic memory configuration between 2 and 8 gigabytes, and it has 8 virtual processors. Let's change this via the Azure portal. I will go to this virtual machine here, virtual machine 2020, and now I could change the size of the machine. When you ever created a virtual machine in Azure, you know these are functionalities you also have for a virtual machine in Azure. But this virtual machine is running on my Azure Stack HCI cluster in my location. Now I could say, okay, let's choose the virtual processor count. Let's switch it to 8. Let's save this here. I will change the size of the virtual machine so I can decrease the size, I can increase the size. For memory, it's a little bit more, let's say, complicated because for memory, we have the situation that a virtual machine needs a minimum amount of memory. So when we, for example, want to run Windows Server in there, we have to ensure that we have minimum 2 gigabytes of memory. For the virtual processors, for sure, the virtual machine will be slower afterwards, but it will be possible to do this. Here we can see it saved the size. So the workflow looks like this. Actually, the Azure portal has saved the information. It has to change the amount of virtual processors for this virtual machine to 4. This information is delivered to the local Azure Arc resource bridge. And this Azure Arc resource bridge configures this value for the virtual machine. Windows Admin Center actually is not refreshed here, but I will close the settings and reload the settings for the virtual machine. And then we will see that this virtual machine now has 4 virtual CPUs. Here it's still the old value. Let's refresh here the list. And let's go to the settings of the virtual machine. A little bit faster is, here we already can see the virtual 4 processors. And when I go to the settings page back to the processors, then we have the information. Now this machine has 4 virtual CPUs, 4 virtual processors. This is possible via the Azure portal with CPUs. This is available with disks, so I can attach disks to this machine. I can change the networking settings and so on. So this is really cool when you are looking for a central management of your larger environment. And if you are thinking about different customers, you could also use these things via Azure Lighthouse. Azure Lighthouse is the technology that allows you to manage at scale across different customers. And there you are also able to jump into the clusters of the different customers and manage them here via the Azure portal. So Windows Admin Center is our main tool. Azure Portal gets more and more features for the management of the Azure Stack HCI cluster. For sure, we can also manage functionalities via the traditional tools, like the Failover Cluster Manager, for example. When you look at the way how to create a virtual machine, then, for example, in the Windows Admin Center, we have the advantage, we have a powerful wizard that guides us through all the steps, that has the intention to provide a fully configured virtual machine. Let's do this. Let's go to new virtual machine. We could also deploy a virtual machine via the Azure portal. Let's create a CL101 VM 101. I think this virtual machine, let's take the 201. 201. We have a generation recommended. We have a host recommended. I have a default path. I have an amount of virtual processors. I have the startup memory. I can decide to use dynamic memory and configure the minimum and the maximum memory amount. I can configure the virtual networking, could decide to connect it to a virtual switch and add some storage. This can also be done via the tool here, and the virtual machine is created. So one page, different settings. Then we can start the virtual machine, we can connect the virtual machine, we can install an operating system. In the Failover Cluster Manager, we have a different approach. We can also go to the virtual machines here. We can create a virtual machine on the node. We could decide to create a virtual machine with a similar name in my naming convention here. Let's create the CL101 VM202, and let's create a generation 2. Here the interesting thing is, if I decide for 2 gigs of memory, I can also create configure dynamic memory, but I cannot specify this minimum and maximum amount. When I go to next, I can connect it to a virtual switch, but I couldn't choose the number of virtual machines. For sure, I can create the virtual hard disk, install an operating system, and create the virtual machine. And then I can go afterwards into the settings and change these settings like virtual CPUs and things like this. Let's do this here for the virtual machine. We have the 101, this one here. I can go to the settings and specify the amount of CPUs here. For example, 4 virtual CPUs, memory minimum 2 gigs and maximum 4 gigs here is possible. These are additional steps. But the advantage is when I use the Failover Cluster Manager, when I switch to nodes, they are immediately here. When I switch to roles, they are immediately here. It's a very fast tool. It's, let's say, a basic tool. It is a tool that was introduced in how it looks actually with Windows Server 2008. Windows Admin Center is a modern tool. It's helpful to have additional configuration settings. But if I switch to the servers, it takes a while because Windows Admin Center has no database behind. It always requests the information directly from the nodes. When I go to the inventory, it takes a moment till it shows up. When I switch to the virtual machines, you have seen something about 20 virtual machines. They have to be collected. As more virtual machines I have, as longer it takes. So both tools have their advantages. If you want to have a fast basic management, you can use the Failover Cluster Manager. If you want to have additional features, you can use the Windows Admin Center. The future is the Azure portal with the Azure Arc integration. And what you always can use is the PowerShell. If you don't like these graphical tools, but you want to script everything, this works on premises via PowerShell and in the cloud via the Cloud Shell. And in combination with ARM templates, you can automate everything.
Perfect. So we are almost at the end of today's show, and the next one is November the 10th. So this is the last one prior Ignite. I think, Manfred, it would make sense to give an overview about what Azure Arc and Azure Arc Resource Bridge is.
Yep.
And then after Ignite, we can dig deeper into all the announcements and show a lot of demos and some new presentations, for example, we receive. So I'm very curious about what's happening. So hopefully you will join us in 2 weeks from now on as well. And this is the moment when we say goodbye to our international friends, because at the end of the show, we all always switch to German because we have some offers for our German friends in the coming weeks, and we would like to present them. But to our international friends now, we say goodbye, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we'll come back in 2 weeks. Ja, und somit sind wir dann wieder im Deutschen. Ja, auch bei euch möchten wir uns bedanken, dass ihr dabei wart. Aber wie immer am Ende der Azure Stack HCI Show gibt es noch ein bisschen Ausblick auf das, was kommt. Die nächste Sendung haben wir dann am 10. November. Da freuen wir uns drauf, wenn es dann endlich dann auch in den Bereich nach der Ignite geht, weil da gibt es doch einiges, was wir erwarten und können es kaum erwarten, das mit euch zu teilen. Ja, und eine gute Möglichkeit, das mit euch zu teilen, ist auf diesem Event hier, nämlich am 29. und 30. November in Würzburg findet zum zweiten Mal die Hybrid Cloud Konferenz statt. Und da wird es wieder jede Menge toller Sponsoren geben aus dem Hardware-Umfeld. Eine Lenovo, glaube ich, hat schon zugesagt. Manfred, korrekt?
Genau, Lenovo wird mit dabei sein vor Ort in Würzburg, ja.
Genau, und wir haben auf jeden Fall auch wieder tolle Speaker aus dem Microsoft-Umfeld. Der Alexander Orta ist wieder da, der Thomas Röttinger ist da aus dem Engineering-Team. Manfred ist natürlich dabei. Ich werde auch dabei sein und freue mich, euch dort zu treffen. Das ist der perfekte Zeitpunkt, 2 Wochen nach der Ignite, um einfach mit euch all diese Announcements durchzugehen in Wort und Bild. Also falls ihr euch noch nicht angemeldet habt, habt ihr auf jeden Fall jetzt noch die Möglichkeit, das zu tun. Ja, auch zum Thema Azure Arc wird es sicherlich einige Neuerungen geben und am 7. November, das ist also noch vor der Ignite, gibt es auf jeden Fall nochmal eine Azure Arc Show mit Manfred und dem Alexander. Das Thema ist noch nicht final, aber es geht natürlich immer so um aktuelle Themen rund um Azure Arc. Da laden wir euch auf jeden Fall auch ein, dabei zu sein. Das Ganze über Manfreds YouTube-Channel, also youtube.com/Manfred Helber, da findet ihr diese Sendung. Ansonsten jeden Montag, immer von 10 bis 11, gibt es die Windows Business Solution Club, also die WBSC Skills. Und im Oktober haben wir das Thema Windows Server vNext. Wir haben ja in einigen Demos schon gesehen, dass die Version wahrscheinlich 2025 heißen wird. Zumindest steht es auf einigen Previews so auch schon dabei oder drauf. Und in der letzten Ausgabe im Oktober, nächsten Montag, geht es um Remote Desktop Services in Windows Server der nächsten Generation. Da gab es ja jede Menge Verunsicherungen. Wie sieht die Zukunft da aus? Und soweit ich es mittlerweile beurteilen kann, werden wir in der nächsten Version definitiv natürlich Remote Desktop Services haben. Ich glaube, das stand nie außer Frage. Aber wir werden wahrscheinlich auch die Microsoft 365 Apps wieder supporten. Wahrscheinlich ähnlich wie in der aktuellen Version innerhalb des Mainstream Supports. Aber dazu werden wir dann final natürlich erst Entscheidung mitgeteilt bekommen, wenn das Produkt dann angekündigt ist. Ich gehe nicht davon aus, dass das schon auf der Ignite passieren wird oder zur Ignite. Ich denke eher wahrscheinlich irgendwann im Frühling nächsten Jahres, weil wenn man den normalen Rhythmus des Produktes sich anschaut, ist es zu erwarten, wahrscheinlich im Herbst nächsten Jahres. Ich glaube, da erzähle ich keine Geheimnisse, dass alle 3 Jahre etwa der neue Windows Server kommt. Also sobald es da irgendetwas Neues zu berichten gibt, werden wir es natürlich über unsere Kanäle auch tun. Aber was es so alles zum Thema Remote Desktop Services gibt, darüber wird der Manfred am kommenden Montag schon mal sprechen. Zumindest über die Dinge, die wir Stand heute wissen. Ja, und
Genau.
wenn ihr offene Fragen habt, könnt ihr euch natürlich immer an den WWSC Support in Person an den Manfred wenden, immer über unsere YouTube-Channels, Freitag immer vor der Azure Stack HCI Show und auch hier am 10. November, also heute in 14 Tagen, wieder eine Stunde für eure Fragen. Richtet sie gerne im Vorfeld, zum Beispiel über LinkedIn an den Manfred, kann er ein bisschen was vorbereiten oder eben auch live in der Sendung. Beides ist gerne gesehen. Dann haben wir natürlich unsere LinkedIn-Channel und da gibt es mittlerweile ja richtig viele. Es gibt den vom Manfred und das Profil von mir. Da empfehlen wir auf jeden Fall dabei zu sein, weil dann verpasst ihr gar nichts von den Dingen, die wir halt so posten. Wenn ihr aber sagt, mich interessiert ausschließlich das Thema Azure Stack HCI, dann haben wir eben die Azure Stack HCI Show als Profil auch auf LinkedIn und eben auch am Anfang der Sendung heute ja mehrfach erwähnt, die Azure Stack HCI Tech Talk. Profile auf LinkedIn und auch auf YouTube. Das ist eben so der englischsprachige Content, auf dem gerade auch sehr, sehr viel passiert. Also viele Möglichkeiten, uns zu folgen. Und über YouTube haben wir ja schon gesprochen. Der Vorteil ist, wenn ihr uns dort folgt, dann werdet ihr proaktiv informiert, wenn es neuen Content gibt. Also macht das gerne. Und schaut auch immer mal in den Playlists nach. Ich hatte ja heute in der Sendung erwähnt, dass es da diese Deployment Specialists gibt und dass man da mal nachschauen kann nach diesem Single Node. Habe vorhin schon mal parallel ein bisschen geguckt und ich glaube, dass es da gar nicht drin ist, dass es zum damaligen Zeitpunkt den Single Node noch gar nicht gab. Von daher kann es gut sein, dass wir aus unserer Schmiede, aus Manfreds Schmiede, gar keinen englischsprachigen Content dazu haben. Aber das überprüfe ich auf jeden Fall nochmal. Ansonsten gibt es auf jeden Fall englischsprachigen Content von Kollegen von mir, die zeigen, wie man so ein Single Node deployt. Also da auf jeden Fall gerne natürlich allgemein in YouTube mal ein bisschen rumstöbern. Ja, und dann haben wir noch den WBSC-Kalender. Das ist eben für all diejenigen, die sagen, ich hätte gerne die ganzen Veranstaltungen rund um den WBSC in meinem Kalender importiert. Findet ihr unter manfredhelber.de/Kalender eine Anleitung, wie ihr den Kalender abonnieren könnt. Und wenn ihr statt Kalender hinter das Slash einen Newsletter packt, dann findet ihr auch noch eine Möglichkeit, den WBSC-Newsletter von Manfred zu abonnieren. Da werdet ihr dann auf traditionelle E-Mail-Art und Weise über die Aktivitäten von Manfred informiert. Ja, dann sind wir an der Stelle auch schon wieder am Ende der heutigen Sendung. Ich verabschiede mich auf jeden Fall bei euch. Hat wieder Spaß gemacht. Und wie immer gehören die letzten Worte dann dem Manfred. Also schönes Wochenende und bis demnächst.
Ja, ich verabschiede mich heute auch, heute wirklich ins Wochenende, weil die Hybrid-Show, die es sonst immer an dem gleichen Tag gibt wie die Azure Stack HCI-Show, gibt es heute nicht, aber in 2 Wochen sind wir dann nachmittags auch wieder mit der Hybrid-Show dabei. Von daher ein schönes Wochenende euch und am Montag sehen wir uns hoffentlich um 10 zu den WBSC-Skills. Macht's gut, tschüss.